Hi, my name's Doug with Doug Green Media, and today I am interviewing Lisa Montanaro about productivity. Lisa, welcome to the Hangout here.
Hi.
And we're using Google Hangouts, which is a great way for interviewing people and doing live casts and all kinds of things. But I'm here to talk with Lisa about productivity. She's a productivity expert, and specifically in getting more done in less time and getting the right things done instead of the wrong things. So I just a little bit of background. I first met Lisa at the Sacramento Speakers Network about 2 years ago when she first moved out to California from New York. And when I saw her speak, there was just like this, there was a crispness about her delivery, and you could tell that she just kind of had it together. She's a former lawyer, and she's a productivity consultant. And as I've gotten to know her more over the past couple of years, it's kind of amazing what she's doing. She's launched an online university. She's in a great relationship. She has coaching clients all over the world. She bikes. She's in play productions. She speaks all over the country. It's amazing. So I know that she walks her talk, and I wanted to find out from her some tips that she could give to people about how they could have that same kind of productivity in their own lives. So Lisa, welcome, and perhaps you could give us a little bit of background about productivity, how you got into it, what are some of the problems you see, and then we can go into the tips. Sound good?
Great, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's been wonderful since I moved out to California, meeting some of the local people out here and connecting. And obviously you and I, Doug, have a lot in common in terms of hiking and bike riding and travel and speaking. So it's been great getting to know you, and I appreciate the compliment, so thank you. And I would say productivity is something that I've always been interested in. And when I was still practicing law, I would actually, I was a productivity geek, the way other people are like computer technology geeks. I would reorganize the file folders because I would come up with a better system, or I would ask the law firm like, hey, how are we doing this workflow, and improve it. So it's just something that always came natural to me and that I really enjoyed. And then lots of friends and family would ask me for suggestions, and I realized that I was helping a lot of other people. So when I was leaving my law career and thinking, what could I do as an entrepreneur? What am I really good at? I had all these different certifications and backgrounds and training and degrees, but productivity just seemed like the most natural fit. So it's actually been 12 years since I left my law career after 9/11 and launched my business, and absolutely love it. And my brand's a little different, though, because a lot of productivity experts will help you be more productive, either to help you do more or produce more or to affect your bottom line. And I always tell people, if that's your goal, we can get that done. But my particular brand is more about helping you be more productive so that you can live a passionate and successful and purposeful life. And you can run a better business and make more money. But usually that's not what people really want when you dig deep. They really want a sense of not feeling out of control. And they really want a sense of, taking back their control over their schedule and their life and everything that's going on. So it's kind of cool.
So it's about like getting rid of overload and just finding a little bit more space in their life, yeah?
Yeah, and really focusing more, and as we'll talk about today, being more strategic in their decisions, and really taking control of their habits and behaviors. Because a lot of people know a lot of things. Like, we all know about productivity, but we don't always do those things. So what I try to help my clients is to move from knowing to doing, and to be a lot more intentional and purposeful about all their decisions that they're making. And a lot of people get obsessed with the tools. Like, oh, Lisa, show me all the new gadgets and the new productivity apps. And there's a place for that in productivity, of course, but usually that's like putting a Band-Aid on it. Like, here's a new app. But if the person has really poor habits to start with and doesn't have a good relationship with time management, then the app isn't really going to cut it. So.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to that before we go into the top 5 tips?
Sure, absolutely. So I came up with this concept of crazy busy is a badge of honor now in our society, and it shouldn't be. So I've noticed that a lot of people are engaging in a contest. And so let's pretend that you and I saw each other at the Sacramento Speakers Network. Maybe I say, hey, Doug, how are you doing? And you say, oh, Lisa, I'm I'm just crazy busy right now. I mean, things are just, out of control, and I'm running around like a chicken without a head, and I'm not getting any sleep. And most people are saying that now as if they're boasting. So it's really sort of a sad, it's a little bit of a sad element to our society right now, that people are sort of trying to one up each other to see who's busier and who's more out of control and who's getting less sleep. And I really try to help my clients and my audience members when I'm doing speaking realize that that's not a badge of honor that you want to win. You don't want to be the crazy busiest, because that really means that you're not taking control. So what I'm going to try to do today is use 5 tips to teach people to have proactive, positive productivity. So really kind of not falling into the crazy busy side, because that's just not a great place to be in.
Positive, proactive productivity. That's nice. I like the way those words go together. All right, well, why don't we start with the first one?
Okay, great. So let me just pull up my handy dandy little 5 tips here. And of course I know the first one, but want to say it the right way. So the first one's a little provocative or controversial. I like to say to people, time isn't the problem, you are. And here's what I mean by that. We have to examine our relationship with time. And one of the biggest things we do without even realizing it is we blame time itself, as opposed to blaming ourselves and our habits and behaviors that need to change. So typically someone will say to me like, oh, I would love to do that. I'd love to be more productive, but I don't have any time. And I'm like, wait a minute, come here, let me feel your pulse. I'm like, yep, you do have time because you're still breathing. So when you're saying that, really what you're saying is, I don't feel like I'm managing my time well. And it should be a little bit of a sort of antenna going off for you. If you find yourself saying that often, like, I don't have any time, then reframe that and say, okay, clearly if I'm saying that, it means that I'm feeling a little out of control right now, and I need to examine my time management, and I need to examine what I'm doing with my time and why it's not in alignment with my priorities. So I like to tell people that time isn't the problem, you are. And I know it's a little in your face, but I think it's a way to sort of get our attention. So it's almost like a little self-assessment. It's like, let's take a step back and figure out how we're feeling and stop blaming time, because time keeps ticking no matter what. It's what are we doing with our time? Yeah.
Okay, so that's sort of like a reflection of reflection.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really nice way to say it. I think it's more of a reflection than an assessment tool. So really it's, and it also gives you a chance to step back and breathe. I mean, if you really are falling into the crazy busy mentality, then when's the last time you've actually stopped and examined your relationship with time? And not just by looking at your calendar, but also by sitting back and asking yourself, like, some really tough questions, like, why am I saying yes to so many things that maybe I don't want to be saying yes to? Why do I overschedule myself? Why do I put myself last? Or why do I underestimate how long it takes to do things? So all those types of things are more of the assessment, but it needs to start with a reflection first. So I like your word.
Okay. What's the second point? Second tip you can give
So
us?
the second point is, let's say you are walking around with all of these to-dos and responsibilities and tasks in your head. That causes what I like to call mental clutter. And you probably have it, right, Doug? I mean, you're human. Don't you have some mental clutter, like all these things in your head?
Yeah, there's this project and that project and this part of my life. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do too. We're human, and for some clients, that mental clutter can actually really get in the way of being able to make really good decisions. It can make you cranky. It can make you lash out at your loved ones. Maybe make you not the best worker. It can cause a lot of stress, and in an extreme, it can cause insomnia. I have some clients that contact me that say I'm not sleeping because I have so much in my head, and it can also cause illness. So one of the first things I tell people to do is the term "do a brain dump." And I know it doesn't sound pretty. I don't want you to picture like brain matter coming out of your head. But the idea is to take all the things swimming around in your head and to take them out and put them somewhere. And what most people do with them, we'll talk about this in the next tip, is they put them in a to-do list. And there are reasons why that might not be the best thing to do with them. But essentially, that could be a good place to start. So literally old-fashioned pen and paper by your nightstand if you can't sleep, and write things out. Or just do a little brainstorming session with yourself and be like, okay, why do I feel so stressed out? I have all these things in my head. I need to dump them. So I tell people to try to do a daily brain dump. Usually it works the best at night because it really does clear your mind and help you sleep. But some people do their brain dump in the morning. Other people only need to do a brain dump like once a week or once a month, because once they've dumped it, it's just a matter of adding a few little things as opposed to doing an initial dump. So for everyone that might be watching this video, think about, have you ever done the brain dump? And if you haven't, I would start there. I think that's the most important thing.
So the second tip is to get it out of your head and down on paper or some sort of media so that it's like it's out and it clears your head up.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said some sort of media, because you and I have talked about this in our emails. I'm a big dictator. So that doesn't sound right. Not a dictator of a country. Dictator as in I do voice dictation. So I tend to dictate a lot of my brain dumps. Like I'll think of a great idea and I'll record it as a voice memo, or more likely a voice to text. So I might just email myself or put it in a note. But really, you can capture it anywhere. So you can capture it on paper. You can capture it on a notes feature on your phone. There's great programs out there now, like Evernote, for example. So there's lots of great places. But yeah, you're going to do a brain download. Yeah.
Okay. What's tip number 3?
So tip number 3 is picture you've done this brain download, and let's just pretend it's yours, Doug. And let's say that you now put on your brain download all these personal tasks you need to do, like let's pretend make a doctor appointment and do some errands and go do a return at the store. And then you've got all the stuff having to do with Doug Green Media for your business. Maybe check out a brand new video program, or contact someone to do a future interview. And the next thing you know, your list is disorganized, and it's got all these different things on it that are completely unrelated. So that would get really stressful for a lot of people. So we tend to tell people to do a separation of your master project list from your daily to-do list. And it sounds so simple, but this little thing, A, most people aren't doing it, and B, if you do it, it can make a huge difference in your productivity. Like, unbelievable. Like, I've heard people email me and say, I cannot believe how much separating my master project list and my daily to-do list has helped. Because the average person has a to-do list that looks like a novel. It's huge. And I don't know about you, but if I had to look at a to-do list like that every day, I would feel very inefficient and very inadequate at the end of the day when I didn't cross anything off. So an example would be, let's say you had something on your master project list, like to do a huge new video project. Well, you're not going to do that in one day. So your daily to-do list might have like 3 little pieces of that video project, like to try out the new software, or to get yourself a free trial, or to contact someone you're interviewing. So really small little pieces. So you drill down from the master project list and only put the things on your daily to-do list that you could recently accomplish in one day. So the master project list comes from the brain dump. Then you organize that, let's say, into personal, professional, or different categories, and then the daily to-do list might only have 3 to 5 things on it. That's it. And that alone can make a huge difference in your productivity, because guess what? You'll do those 3 to 5 things, and then you'll be like this at the end of the day. Look at me. I did my daily to-do list, as opposed to like picking up a document and going, I didn't do anything on here, or I only did 3 things, and there were 85 things on that list. So it's basically, I think it's an old Ramon song, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Keep 'Em Separated. And so you want to separate your master project list from your daily to-do list.
Cool. Okay. And then what's the 4th tip you have for us?
The 4th tip is hard for a lot of people. It's called own your interruptions. So let's just talk briefly about, the difference between interruptions and task switching. So if you and I hang up in a little while and you're working this afternoon in your office, without even realizing it, you will task switch on your own without being interrupted every 3.2 minutes. And that comes from research from the University of Michigan, from the David Meyer, does a lot of studies on multitasking. And it's actually not that bad for your productivity, because most people get really used to it. So for example, you might be working on a project, and then you'll go, oh, I forgot to send Lisa a follow-up email about something, and you might task switch, send the email, hit send, and go back to your document. And you might do that all day long, every 3 minutes. So that's bad enough when you think about all the task switching that we do to ourselves. But then on top of that, the average person is interrupted 73 times a day. That's a lot. Although it's funny, because some of my audiences are like, that's nothing. My kids interrupt me more than 73 times a day.
That's an hour.
Exactly. So that's an average. But how do you own your interruptions? It's not always easy, and you don't want to appear like you have, like, let's say you and I work from home. We're entrepreneurs, but for someone that works out in the workplace, they don't want to maybe close their door. They don't want to, put a big sign on the door that says, like, don't interrupt. But sometimes you need to set up these do not disturb hours and maybe let people know that you're working on a big project and you can't be interrupted. And you may need to, like, turn off the phone, turn off the email prompts, and set yourself up for uninterrupted time. You can also grade your interruptions, and I know that sounds mean, but you can have, like, the A interrupters, the B interrupters, and the C interrupters. Like, an A interrupter might be your prize client, your boss, or a sick child, and maybe a B interrupter is, like, a friend, and then maybe a C interrupter is like a telemarketer. And so you could say, okay, during this time, I'm only going to take an A interruption. I'm not going to take any B and C. And then you may have other times when you might not even take an A interruption, although hopefully you don't have a sick child, but you know what I mean. So that's another thing, is you could grade your interruptions. And then my favorite sort of mini tip for dealing with interruptions is called the counter offer. And I'm amazed how many people don't use it. So a lot of people will get interrupted, and someone will call them or come to their office or email them and say, hey, Doug, do you have 15 minutes? I've got a big issue that I want you to help me with. And a lot of people will be like, oh, God, and they'll take the interruption. And let's say it wasn't a good time for you. So every interruption is an offer. That's how I want you to look at it from now on. Every interruption is just an offer. You have the opportunity, if you want, to counteroffer. And you can say, actually, Lisa, I can't help you now, but how does after 3 p.m. work? Done. And people just don't do this enough in the workplace and in their private lives. Someone says, hey, can you bake for the bake sale? And when is that? Thursday night. Actually, I can't bake for this Thursday night, but let me know when the next bake sale is. That's a counteroffer. So if you did that more often, if we did that more often, we wouldn't get ourselves into these situations where our schedules are overbooked and overstuffed. And we'd be able to give our schedules more of a diet. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And on point number 5, I see a rule that looks really familiar. Maybe you can tell us more about that.
Sure. You might actually know this. I think you do. I think we've talked about this before. So, and without giving you a huge history lesson, it's called the Pareto Principle, P-A-R-E-T-O. It's named after Vilfredo Pareto, who was a 19th century Italian economist. And he actually studied land use in Italy and noticed that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. And then in the 1940s, I believe, maybe the 50s, Joseph Uran, I think it's J-U-R-A-N, used it and applied it towards business and economy in America. And it now is known as the 80-20 rule. And that's how most people know it. And a lot of people hear it thrown around, but they're not quite sure what it means. It means that in any grouping of items, that 80% is usually irrelevant and 20% is relevant. So let's apply that to a few different things. So in your business, a lot of times, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your clients. Those are like the top 20. In interruptions, 80% of your interruptions come from the same 20% people. We call them the time bandits because they keep stealing your time. Hopefully you're not one of the time bandits if you're out there. And then, like, a lot of people only wear 20% of their clothing. So we've seen this applied a lot in paper management. 20% of your paperwork is relevant. 80% of all the paper that's saved anywhere in any file is usually irrelevant. It's pretty incredible. So let's apply this towards productivity, as in your energy management and task management. Really, what the Pareto Principle stands for, like the takeaway for us, is to really study what you're spending your time on and ask yourself, is this part of the 20% that's really important, that's really essential, that's really relevant, or is this part of that 80% that people get caught up on and start spinning their wheels and looking like a little hamster? And it's a little bit of a check-in, or like you put it earlier, it's a little bit of reflection. So what's nice about it is you've almost got like a reflection at the top and the bottom of the 5 tips, and they bookend the middle of the tips, and the middle of the tips are a little more active. So the middle of the tips are more, let me get into action mode, whereas the figuring out your relationship with time and then checking in with the 80-20 rule, those are a little bit more of a check-in and a reflection. And I tell people that, with the Pareto Principle, they're like, well, how will I know if this is part of the 80 or 20? You'll know after a while. If you start to study your productivity and your habits and your behavior, you should know if this is essential, if this is a priority. if this is one of the things that's taking you forward towards what you claim is really important to you, or if this is something that's just taking up your time. So that's the 80-20 rule. You've heard of it, right? I mean, you used
Oh,
it.
yeah. In fact, sometimes I've heard it even called the 90-10 rule.
Oh, interesting.
Cases.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I like it, even though the numbers may be skewed, because I have heard people take issue with it. I don't think it's supposed to be a hard and fast rule about the percentages. It's supposed to be more of just letting you think about what is essential. And usually it's a pretty small amount. As you just said, it could be 90-10, it could be 80-20. And it's really powerful when you watch it in action. When people start to get it, they're like, wow, actually, Lisa, I looked at my brain dump, and as important as I thought it was, and it's been swimming around in my head, when I actually examined it and then pulled out what I would do on a daily basis, I actually was able to get rid of 60% of it or something. So it's interesting how much we crowd ourselves with, and then when it really comes down to it, physically, things that we buy, consumerism, material possessions, and then all the non-physical things, our tasks, our to-dos, our responsibilities, when you really drill down, a lot of it's not essential.
Okay, so those are the 5 tips, and I'm just going to recap them. The first point is time is not the problem. You are. So reframe your thinking about time management. Tip number 2 is do a brain dump. Get all these different things that are going around in your brain that you need to do and you're thinking about, and get them outside of your brain, whether you use paper media or digital media. Just get them out so you can clear your brain out. Number 3 is with your to-do list, keep them separated. Don't intermingle business and pleasure and this and that. Just keep them really separate and clean so you can really see each project on its own, each list on its own. Point number 4 is own your interruptions. So make sure that you become mindful of them, become conscious of where you're spending time away, and then once you've caught their attention, then take steps to deal with it. And the 5th one is to use the power of the Pareto Principle, otherwise known as the 80-20 rule. 80% of your business might be coming from 20% of your clients. 80% of your results come from 20% of your work. So make sure you're working on that 20% and not the 80%. Is that a pretty good recap, Lisa?
Yeah, that's great. It's actually really fun to hear someone else say them. And also, what I love about what you just did, and what everyone can do after they've listened to this, is make them your own. So everyone will sort of filter this through their own life, their own productivity challenges, or maybe they're not challenged in one of these areas. So, reframing them so that they make sense for your life and your productivity actually works really well. So it's kind of fun to hear you say them slightly different than maybe the way I worded them, because you're already making them yours, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully they'll get me some results. I'm counting on it. So I understand, too, that you've got a way for people to follow up with you to learn more about this.
Absolutely. So if you go to lisamontanaro.com, and it should be on your screen, and then also I have an online university, which is really neat because I offer group coaching programs in different areas, and that is lmguniversity.com. And one of the best ways to stay in touch is I'm a huge social media fan. I'm a huge user. Of course, I use my time management skills to not be on there too long. But you can find me as Lisa Montanaro pretty much on every social media platform. And if you want to become a member of my online community, then you can actually go to lisamontanaro.com/toolkit. And I have a really wonderful interactive multimedia toolkit. So you get 2 audio programs and an ebook, and it's called Achieve Powerhouse Success with Purpose, Passion, and Productivity. And it goes a lot deeper into some of the things that we were talking about today. And that way you get to be a part of my online community, but also get this wonderful toolkit to keep for years to come and hopefully put into action, as you said, so that you can see some results. So.
Great. Thanks. So that's lisamontanaro.com/toolkit. Okay. So anything you want to say in closing?
Sure. I think I just want people to be really cognizant of the language they use, because language is really powerful. And so I'm going to ask you all, a little call to action here is to take the words crazy, busy out of your vocabulary. And it's going to be hard. And I think I emailed something to Doug when I was talking to him about doing this interview. And I said to him, this is something we all struggle with, me included. And I have to catch myself at times. Like if I say something like, oh, I'm really busy this week. I'm like, don't do that. And someone said to me, like, why? I think busy has some negative energy around it. So I like to use terms like, I have a really full schedule this week on purpose. Like I've booked up a lot of clients and I'm really excited about it. So you can call it sort of the half full versus the half empty mentality. But I like to say to be more positive and proactive about your productivity. And so if you catch yourself next time saying, oh, I'm crazy busy, first of all, be like, oh, that Lisa, I'm going to kill her, because now I can't say that anymore without thinking of it. But also just to reframe and ask yourself, what are you really thinking here, and to take back some control. So that would be sort of my call to action, would be to first change your vocabulary, because you will change your behaviors eventually, but you can't really change your actions until you change your behaviors and your mindset. So I would focus on that first.
All right. Lisa, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Doug. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.